Hi, thanks everyone for coming. Today we're going to be talking about the secrets to writing highly effective email campaigns for both cold email and email marketing.
Hello, Heather. This is Davide from Follow. Thank you very much for being here. We're very happy to have you here.
Well, we're really excited to be doing this with you too, Davide. In case you don't know about Follow, it's basically a really cool tool to learn what your competition and your client's competition is doing, so you can stay ahead of the game, and you can even use that for email personalization as well.
That's correct.
Okay, so a little bit about myself and Salesfolk in case you don't know. My background is I'm actually a former economist, so totally different than what we're doing now, but I have over 7 years of copywriting. Some of our clients have included a number of Y Combinator companies like Ambition and MixRank, and also other tech startups and some Fortune 500 companies. You may or may not know the book Predictable Revenue by Aaron Ross. He's one of the first sales guys at Salesforce, but it's a really good book for thinking about outbound sales and how to manage that. I actually helped him put together the sequel to the book, so that's a cool book to check out. And basically, I write cold emails that get high response rates, that are highly targeted, and some of those emails are 38% and even higher.
Heather, can you please give us an idea of the worst cold emails mistakes you noticed are common among marketers?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first mistake that you often see is that sales and marketing people both don't understand their audience.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes two problems will arise. One is that they're too general, and so they'll be including like a VP of sales with a VP
Yes.
of marketing with a VP engineering. So if you're too general, you won't be targeted enough.
Yeah.
And then other times they just don't really understand the persona or what that persona needs. So that's also a problem.
Okay.
Second mistake is that your message is too self-focused. So yeah, you don't want to talk all about you. You want to talk about your prospects, right?
Yeah, you want to make the message about them.
Mm-hmm. And ask them questions, and rather than having a monologue, you can have a conversation in your email.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then the third problem is that a lot of cold emails are just too long. You see like walls of text like it's a blog post, and it should be very short. On average, most effective cold emails are like 3 to 5 sentences, usually about 3.
3 to 5 sentences. Okay.
And then the fourth problem is that people try to talk about too many things in their cold emails. It should be very focused. So each email you send should focus on one major feature or benefit, and you can save those for your other emails, because you're not just sending one, right? You might be sending 5 or 8.
Okay, and that should reflect what you say in the subject line as well.
Exactly. And everything should be related. Subject line, call to action, all of it should just be focused on one thing. Yeah.
Okay, so these 4 mistakes are the most common that one should avoid. So how do you run an effective campaign if you are a marketer, Heather?
Yeah, absolutely. So getting started, you really want to make sure you're targeting the right people and that you build a solid list. So you don't want it to be too wide and all over the place. Again, you want it to be very narrow and targeted. So you want to think about things like company size, potentially industry, title, and segment your list. And you can also do some creative things if you're building an outbound list to think about how you want to build that criteria. So it might not even be just like company size at the start. You could also build a list by thinking about, say there's some award like best company for 2014. You could build a targeted list starting with that. Or you could think of like a convention and look at all the companies who are sponsoring that. You could also even like look at competitors of certain companies
Yes.
to extend your list. But you want to have a very clear, common criteria, and the more focused it is, the better your campaign will be, and the more effective it'll be.
Are you a believer that the size of the list is important?
Well, you do want to have. I mean, it depends on your priorities, right? You want to have enough volume to meet your goals. So like say you have a 10% response rate. Well, it depends on like how many, all those things, but you don't need a massive list.
Yeah.
It's really a balance between volume and quality. So like it's a lot better to send 100 emails and get a 10% response rate than to send 1,000 emails and get less than 1%. You still have the same outcome, but you also want to protect your brand as well. So there's a balance between the two.
Yeah, you want engagement most of all.
Yeah, and you want responses. And
any other effective tips you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So the other thing that we think about is always A/B testing, so that you can see what's working and not. So usually when we're getting started architecting a campaign, what we'll do is we'll actually list out all the value propositions and benefits. Yes. So once you have like all those on paper, you can start getting into different psychologies like fear, greed, competition. So say I'm an analytics company that does video marketing, and I help companies with their video marketing. SaaS companies, let's say. So with that, one of the value props could be like get more qualified leads from your video marketing. Another one could be something around like saving time on managing your videos. Another could be like just getting more just money out of ROI out of what you're doing. So for each of the different value props, you could go positive or negative. You could even scare them into thinking that like the brand is being damaged by the way they're doing their existing video marketing. So you can take all those different angles, and you want to test them all out because different people are motivated by different things. Some are very motivated by fear, others greed, others competition.
You want to make them feel something with your email.
Yeah. And so that brings me to my next tip. So usually in terms of timing and cadence, we do an 8 email campaign for outbound. For drip, it can be a little bit less, maybe depends on what you're doing. It might be like 3 or 5, it could be 8, depends on the whole campaign. But for outbound, it's 8 emails, and there's always an A and a B. So 1A and 1B and 2A and 2B. And you go all the way to 8 on the breakup email. But each of them is different. They're not just like, hey, I'm following up. Each one is a different either value prop or psychology. So usually like the first 3 or so are just different value props. But after that, you start looking at psychologies. And so like, okay, maybe it's value prop of around improving conversion rates. Well, then you can go with fear of, oh, are you losing customers in your funnel versus like getting more customers. And so you just test all these things out. And then typically also with email, you have to think about there being a cost and a benefit. So you want a balance of where you're sending enough to be persistent, but also not being obnoxious, right?
Yeah, that's right. Also because you want to send them enough because people maybe they might forget about your brand and your name. That's right.
Yeah, and people are busy. So say you have a call to action, even if it's good, and I have just a busy week, I might not respond, and then my inbox is full. So you follow up like the next week, and then, oh, it's really good, I'm still busy. Sometimes it's not until the 8th email that people will respond. And as long as you're having a unique message and a value in each email, and making it easy for people to unsubscribe or opt out, people generally appreciate the emails. Our clients get messages all the time saying, we don't really normally respond to cold emails, but really appreciate
Your
the
email
value.
was good, yeah.
Yeah, your email was good. This was interesting. This is valuable. I want to learn more. Sometimes it's not until the 7th or 8th email. So if you send about 4 to 8 days apart, that's usually good. Usually it can be around 4. It depends on the industry.
4 to 8. Okay.
Yeah. So you end up with like about 1 or 2 emails a week. And we've oftentimes seen that Thursday, Friday, and the weekend can even work well.
Right.
Weekend more for outbound than a drip campaign, but yeah.
So Thursdays and Friday. Okay.
Yeah.
And Heather, do you have a successful cold email template that you can share with us? Something that maybe works for you on a constant basis or worked in the past? And can you also explain why this template worked?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually do. So here on the next slide is an email template that got about a 10% response rate from a recent client. And this was part of and it was part of an 8 email sequence.
Okay.
So it wasn't just 10% for the whole campaign. This one and this was part of it. Yeah, and it was part of an 8 email sequence. Email was 10%.
Right.
So this email, it was early on in the sequence. It was being sent to a VP or director of sales at enterprise companies. And so the subject is, how competitive is Company X's sales team? Hi, first, what are you doing to ensure Company X's sales team maintains its competitive edge quarter over quarter? We've helped companies like Dropbox and Granite Insurance increase and maintain their sales team's numbers by implementing incentives across their sales funnel. And I believe the same concept could work for Company X. When do you have time for me to share this quick idea with you? Thanks.
Okay.
So there's a couple elements we want to think about in this email. The first one is the subject line. So you notice that the company's name is included with a mail merge, and that's the prospect.
Yeah.
And so basically, it's been statistically proven that including the company name in the subject line or first name or something relevant like that will increase opens. And so I believe this particular message had about 58 or 59% open rate.
Oh, that's very good.
Yeah, so it was pretty good. And, the full list isn't even necessarily all people who are actually checking their emails, so it might even be higher. Notice the first sentence in the question also has another custom insert, and it's a question. It's not just like a prescriptive statement. It's very conversational, and it's also making the prospect think about their pain point. So this email is kind of about fear or competition. So how are you doing compared to other companies? How are you staying competitive?
Yeah, so it's one of the value propositions you were talking about before.
Yeah, and so the value prop would basically be around sales productivity, but the psychology is more like a combination of fear and competition.
The sentiments.
Exactly.
That's the component. Yeah, absolutely.
And then so we go on to the second sentence, and it mentions a few of the the company's clients, Dropbox and Granite Insurance. And so this is what I call the social proof sentence. This is where, rather than saying like, our company does blah, 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 you can show instead of telling. So you build credibility and trust by mentioning a few of your clients and how you help them. This would be even better if it had a number, like a percentage on how much they improved sales numbers. But it's still okay. And then the call to action is very simple. It's kind of a little bit mysterious, but it's basically trying to get someone on the phone so that you can share an idea, and this idea has been successful for other large companies. So you have an incentive. It's not like, hey, can I get a demo? It's can I share this with you? And this feels very one-on-one, as opposed to like a marketing email with a link that has been sent out to hundreds, if not thousands of people.
Yeah. So that these particular email received a 10% response rate or click rate?
Response.
Response rate.
Because
okay.
there's actually no links in this one. So this was for an outbound campaign, and so this wouldn't work for self-serve, but this company has a full sales team. Of course, you can do like a similar approach with marketing emails and clicks, but if it's an outbound campaign and you have a sales team, you really want to make it seem like one-on-one and not mass. So you just want to start a conversation with them and not have them opt into something as much as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Heather, how do you achieve success in cold email marketing?
So when I'm thinking about if a campaign is successful, there's a few benchmark numbers I like to think about. And these aren't necessarily the industry standards, because the industry standards are much lower. But these are kind of my baseline standards. And so I think a good open rate to aim for is around 50%. And that's much higher than you'll usually hear, but I think it's something that I've consistently gotten for myself and clients, so it's very possible.
That's very high.
Yeah, and we get in the high 70s sometimes, and we've sent large campaigns with thousands out that were in the high 60s for open, so it's possible. You have to be interesting and valuable and do your homework and do testing, A/B testing, but you can do it.
Yeah, that's a dream. That sounds like a dream. 60-70%.
Yeah, it helped. It was an interesting product, but still. And then for the response rates, the adjusted response rates, which are total responses divided by the number of opens. You want, if you're doing the 8 email campaign, you want at least a couple emails that have 10%. Even 8% would not be, but aiming for 10% is a good goal, and you can achieve this through A/B testing.
All right.
And then one more thing, just to add to that, a lot of times people are obsessed with opens and responses and clicks, but the problem is these are vanity metrics too, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So you want to think about your conversion rate. So if this is a marketing email, you want to think about how it's actually converting through your funnel to the landing page or the sign-up form. If it's a sales email, you want to think how many responses are actually becoming appointments. So for sales, you have to think, okay, is this a qualified lead? How many are actually converting? So a good metric is about like 30 to 35% of these responses are actually becoming a sales appointment.
Okay.
And then, so on the other side, if you're having problems with your outbound campaigns, or even, any campaigns for email, there are a few problems that might be occurring that you want to think about. And here's a few ways to diagnose them.
So if you are below these statistics,
yeah, exactly. So if you're having those three problems, you want to kind of step back and kind of diagnose what might be going wrong. And so
okay.
the first thing you'd probably think about is, do I have a good list? If it's an inbound list, how many of these are actually fitting my buyer persona? If it's an outbound list, have I taken the time to create a very good targeted list that fits, again, my buyer persona? How much information do I have? Did I build this myself, or did I buy it from data.com? And there's probably a lot of junk. Bounce rates are a really good indicator for that. If you have a high bounce rate, you have a lot of junk in that list. Also, if you don't have very high open rates, that's also an indicator that the list might be bad, or it could also be your subject line. So if your opens are below 30% and you have a questionable list, it could just be the list, but if you know you have a good list and they're engaged, if it's drip or if it's cold, they're the right audience, you should be getting at least 30% opens. And so there you need to start thinking, okay, are our subject lines good? We should start testing new subject lines and see what we can do to optimize them.
All right. Yeah.
And then the last thing, again, would be like response. So if you're getting like no response or clicks at all, maybe 1% or less, very likely it's your body copy and or your call to action is a problem. So say you're getting good opens, but you're not getting conversions. Assuming you have the right audience, it's probably your call to action. So you should think about changing it and making it more persuasive and relevant.
Okay, so if it is if you have a low responses converge to appointments, it's probably the call to action.
Yeah, very likely. It might be the body as well, but the call to action is probably a big culprit.
Yeah, a big element. Heather, when people think about cold emailing, they always think about they always fear to be labeled as spammer. And how do you think one person can avoid being labeled as a spammer in this industry?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So I think the first thing is, obviously, before even anything, you want to be reaching out to the right people. But after that, you want to make sure that each email is providing value and it's meaningful. So you don't want it to just be obnoxious, like, hey, I'm following up. Hey, I'm following up. Hey, do you want to buy my product yet? Hey, did you respond? Did you click? No, you want there to actually be something interesting in each email and communicate in a way that is thoughtful.
Yeah.
But also, another thing is, say you have a big list that you're sending to, and this is an outbound list. And maybe you have 10 or 20 people at the same company if these are enterprise companies. So one thing you really don't want to do, you won't want to mail like 10 to 20 people at the same company at the same time, because that can actually red flag that company's spam filter. But also, it's just obvious, like if I'm in the same department as you and 5 other people and we all get the same email, we're gonna talk, oh, you got that spam email from that guy, didn't you?
Yeah, that would be ugly.
Yeah, so you want to divide it out. So say you have a big list with a lot of different contacts that are repeat. If it's a really big company, you might be able to get away with like 5 people, but usually you don't want to send more than like 2 or 3 at the same time. And then the last problem is people screw up the way they do their mailing. And there are a lot of ways they'll screw it up. Sometimes they'll try to send an email that looks like it's from the CEO, but they get their name wrong in the Google indicator, or they'll get it wrong in reported. I saw that the other day. I had a cold email from someone in the email. It was like a woman's name, but the
Yeah.
email said it was from Frank, Frank
Okay, in the
something.
end.
Yeah, and you could see like on LinkedIn, it's another person. So that's a obvious like
No,
weird
that's,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's embarrassing.
exactly. And also in general, so if you're doing inbound, it's a little different. But if you're doing outbound, you should probably be doing mail merges,
Yeah,
just because it doesn't inbox the same way if like you're using like a MailChimp or Salesforce or Marketo.
yeah, yeah.
But on the point of that, there's a product that's pretty good for sending these complex campaigns that we've been using for the last few months, and it's called Outreach.io, and it has some pretty cool things that you can do in terms of segmenting by buyer. So say I have like 2 or 3 buyer personas: VP sales, VP marketing, VP engineering.
Yeah.
I can set that up in the campaign, and then I can just copy paste my email templates 1 through 8, and then even set up A/B variants and
So
just
sorry, it's called outreach.io.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
okay.
Outreach.io. And it's just cool because you can basically automate a lot of things, and then they
Mm-hmm.
have kind of a handy dashboard just for tracking. So we used to do a lot of this in Excel
Yeah.
and a bunch of Google
Yeah.
Docs, and then now it's kind of all in one place, which is handy.
Okay. That's a very good tip. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Yelp is also cool for like short, quick outbound emails, but Outreach, I like their dashboard, so it's handy.
All right. All right. Great.
Well, thank you so much, Davide. It's been
No problem.
wonderful. And
Yeah.
this is Davide from Follow.net, and he manages their marketing. Follow.net is a company that makes it very easy to follow what your competition does online, which is very useful for outbound and inbound email campaigns.
Thank you, Heather.
And we're Salesfolk. We basically help you turn your leads into warm conversations with email through copywriting and A/B testing.
Thank you.
Hi, so hope you like the cold email webinar. I'm gonna go and take any questions you guys have now. So if you can either comment directly on the YouTube video or tweet at Heather Rayhan or just hashtag cold email webinar, I'll answer any of your questions right now. So let's see what questions we have. I see one question right now from Derek Newland asking, what are good sources for finding email addresses for your leads? And that kind of depends on what industries we're looking at targeting. One option is to use a company like MixRank, which is mixrank.com, to basically build the list, or you can also buy them. I personally use a combination of MixRank and also scraping from LinkedIn. And any extra things I can't scrape, I'll use Odesk team, which I built myself, to append any information as needed to my list. Let's see if we have any other questions on Twitter. I'll look at the YouTube feed again. Let's see. Refreshing the feed now. So one of the common questions I'm often asked is how to increase your response rate for these campaigns. And I think one of the best ways to do that is just to do A/B testing. And as I talked a little bit before, you can basically increase your response rates just by seeing what works and what doesn't work. And so trying different value props or different messages is a great way to do that. And I think in general, keep your messages very short and simple, like we talked about before. Are there any other questions? I don't see any. Let's see. I'll check the YouTube page once more, but if you guys don't have any other questions, I will call that good. Let's see. Okay, well, if that's all the questions, I'll basically leave it at that. Let me just check my email to make sure none of you guys responded to me on there. Let's see. Okay. The email from Michael. Oh wait, we have another question. Looks like the question is from Davide. Okay, so Davide's question, let's see. Actually, I just saw it. Second. Excuse me. Oh, I see. Okay, so the question that we have now is from Paulo Nathan-Muller. I don't know if I'm saying your name correctly. So your question is, how do I get email responses fast? Campaigns that have 3 to 4 days between steps might take too long. So it sounds like you want to decrease the intervals between your email campaigns. And you can do that, but the problem with that is if you send emails too frequently, you'll actually start to basically become a spammer. And so not giving your prospects enough time will actually have a net negative event. However, if you want I don't know if fast is really the right question. I think, how do I increase response rates or the velocity of them? So I think that the key answer to that involves really more of having a strong call to action. Cold email isn't magic. It kind of depends on your sales cycle and how many touches it normally takes and how hard it is to contact the people you're contacting and so forth. But a cadence of about 4 days is usually the best. You might be able to get a little more aggressive and decrease that a bit, but you run the risk of actually turning your prospects off. So you have to keep that in mind as well. Okay, so I see another question. Oh, I see a comment actually from Derek referring to single leads, but missing emails. So you can guess emails and verify them with different services like Twofer, or you can even have Odesk workers do that. The other thing you can do is use a service like Mixrank or I guess data.com, but data.com's leads are kind of old, to cross-check. Depends on how many. I mean, if it's a couple leads, you can guess it yourself and verify with Rapportive. If it's big, you probably need a better solution. And to answer Richard's question, I personally use Salesforce. I know it's not the easiest thing to use, but I'm a big fan of a lot of the integrations they have. And there's not really anything that can replace it. It's also highly customizable. So I'd recommend using Salesforce. Let's see. Let's see if we have any other questions. Check the YouTube link as well. Yeah, so if that, I'll check once more, but if that's it, hopefully this was helpful. Oh yeah, so the reportive, it looks like Richard also mentioned the reportive extension. Reportive is helpful. It's not as helpful as it used to be just because LinkedIn has limited some of the features in terms of, I think it's third connection emails don't show up in reportive anymore, or maybe it's fourth, I forget. Let's see, what other questions do we have? I'm going to see one more. Okay, so I found Davide's question again. It says, Heather, can email marketing be effective without addressing a person's name? Merge times sometimes do not work well. So I think it can be effective. It's usually more effective the more personalization and merge tags you add, assuming you do them correctly. But it can still work. Assuming you have a good targeted list, it's better. Especially if it's a drip email campaign, it's not as important to have as many merge tags versus a cold. However, it's really helpful if you do spend the time to clean up your data and make sure that the merge tags are correct and do work. That said, though, if you just write in a very personal tone, like you would a one-on-one normal email message to just anyone you're trying to reach out to, it will work better. And so I also see another comment from Davide. It says, Heather, MailChimp has automation, which is similar to what Outreach.io does, I suppose. Do you know which one is better? So I think Davide is referring to MailChimp's automated campaigns. And I love MailChimp. I use it for my own list for drip. But their basic automation feature still sends through MailChimp, as far as I know, and not your own mail server, although there might be a way to customize that. The problem with that is if you're sending to very savvy people, such as like VP sales operations or VP marketing, they're going to know and realize when it says sent from MailChimp when they examine the email. So you need to be wary of that. Basically, the main advantage of Outreach.io or Yesware or even ToutApp is that they all allow to send directly through your own mail server. And so it basically says like sent from Heather@Salesfolk.com instead of Heather at Salesfolk via MailChimp, whatever. And you need to do that if you want them to actually think it's cold one-on-one and not mass. Likewise, it can also change the way you inbox if you're sending through MailChimp. Does that answer your question, Davide? Let's see. Okay, so I see Richard has another question. Which Salesforce integration could I not live without? That's a hard question. I have some stuff set up with Zapier just to integrate to my other, my own other tools that I'm using, and I use Yesware, I use Outreach, I use Trello, I use a number of different things, and so even my Google Calendar, I really like using Zapier just to integrate different tools that I use to Salesforce to auto log things. So that's really helpful. And then, oh, I see another question from Davide. So Outreach Yeah, I would say I would use outreach.io if I was doing B2B campaigns more so. MailChimp and things like that are definitely bigger better for really big campaigns, especially when you're dealing with consumer and you don't know their name. I think in general, MailChimp is really good for like drip email campaigns when you have a list, oftentimes from inbound leads. Uh, Outreach is especially great for cold emails in particular. So that is one of the major use case differences. Although in theory you could use either one for either, I suppose, except you have the issue of a cold email not looking like it's a one-on-one if you're using MailChimp. Let's see if we have any other questions. Well, I think that's probably all the questions for now. I really hope that you guys all enjoyed the live webinar. I'll check once more for questions, but I think that's probably about it. Oh, wait, no, we have another question. So let's see. Richard says for cold, mass, and personalized emails that sends, oh, no. He says to check out something called Reply Boss, which I have not heard of, but I will definitely check that out. So thanks for the tip, Richard. Do you guys have any more questions? It's like not. Okay. So we're going to wrap this webinar up now. If you haven't already subscribed to the webinar, subscribe to the salesfolk.com list and I can send you the webinar recording. I know there was a little bit of a sound quality issue before, but it was fine on our end, so I can send that recording over. Thanks for attending the webinar and have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week.